Hi, I'm Willie with H5 Technology, and thank you for coming to my channel. I want to thank you all so much. You have no idea. We crossed the 19,000 subscriber mark. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys make this absolutely worth it every day, so thank you very much. Now, I was going to do a technical video tonight, and this is going to be maybe somewhat technical, or at least get your brain thinking in a technical manner. While we're not going to do any configuration, I've had at least 3 people email me in the last week and want to know how we choose networking equipment for the job. So how do we put a round peg in a round hole and a square peg in a square hole, and not put square, a square peg in a round hole unless the square peg's small enough, but that's a whole different conversation. So I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit, and I'm going to use 2 vendors that I'm intimately familiar with. I am very familiar with a lot of networking vendors, but these 2 I can speak from first-hand experience within days, right? So the body's not even cold yet, right? So we're going to hop over to this little spreadsheet. I don't really think there's a need to make this particular spreadsheet public because there's not much information on it, but it looks cool, right? So it's got the H5 logo. Remember, if you want to get on our mailing list or check out all the services that we offer, go to h5llc.com. That's right there. But then I put the Ubiquiti networks versus CISCO, right? So what I'm going to talk about, and then we may get into more conversations and have kind of some of these conceptual talks about how do you get into networking and how do you break into this field. And I was fortunate to be kind of right place, right time when I was young. When I was a teenager, I started my own dial-up internet company. I was the first dial-up internet company in the prefix that I lived in. My parents were tired of paying long distance, so at 14 and 15 years old, I started a dial-up internet company. My parents were very supportive, and then the high school principal and superintendent at the time is when CISCO just came out with the Networking Academy program and asked me if I wanted to be in it. And out of the 3 of us that went, I'm the only one that still does networking. My buddy Brent's out there, but he's a manager. Anyway, if Brent was watching this, hey buddy. So let's talk about this a little bit. So Ubiquiti versus CISCO, I get this a lot. And I'm going to tell you there are still some places where CISCO is going to be deployed. And some of the reasons that CISCO is going to be deployed is because there are still managers out there that live by the mantra that no one ever got fired for buying CISCO. That mantra is alive and well, and you are always going to have salespeople working with managers. I'm sure that they are greasing the rails in all kinds of ways. And in fact, I know for a fact that about 10 years ago, there was a salesman that was doing CISCO who offered someone that I reported to a trip to Florida to a water park in exchange for putting in Catalyst Express 500 switches into the core of a 27-site network. Now, those of you who've ever worked with the Catalyst Express 500 know that it's a piece of shit, and it had a real bad MAC address limitation, and so our entire network core would freeze about, once a day, and we'd have to reboot the switches. So that is an example of putting a square peg in a round hole. It was not the right product. I mean, we should have been on big switches. Anyway, Ubiquiti versus CISCO. These are the 2 competitors right now who are squaring off. And CISCO, they're kind of trying to, I think, figure out who they are, what they want to be. They've had a lot of acquisitions. They've made traditionally great products. I used to be a CISCO fanboy. I used to be in the certification track and CISCO. And then one day my eyes were opened and not everything has to be CISCO. So now I use Extreme Networks, Brocade, CISCO, Ubiquiti. I'm trying to get into AdTran. I've got some Dell. Just networking in general, I'll take any of the equipment and make it work. If it's standards-based, we'll make it work. If it's not standards-based, we'll beat it with a hammer till it works, right? So, Ubiquiti versus CISCO. In this particular scenario, let's talk about it. So, do you have a small office network? Do you have 3 PCs? So you need a basic firewall, you need wireless, and maybe you need a switch because you've got a printer or some other network device. So let's say you've got 4 devices. Well, let's just talk about some general numbers. So the cost for a USG is about $115, I'm going to say. Right? Then I can get the 8-port 60-watt switch. I can get that for about, I think I've seen it for about the same price. Then I've got a UAP Pro for, I think I saw those for about 140. Maybe we'll just say, just to be safe, $150, right? So in this particular case, small office, I have a USG and 8-port switch that does PoE, that works with my switch. I could even throw a cloud key on there, but for simplicity, we'll say that this is a remote site and I've got a centralized controller. But you know what? Let's throw a cloud key on there. Maybe it's one office, right? This happens all the time. I support a ton of small customers like this. So your cloud key, I just saw those on sale for like $80 on my Amazon shop. So the link to that Amazon shop is down there in the description. So we take all these prices, and you know what? I should have, this is what I should have done. I should have made 2 columns. Bear with me. This is on the fly. I've been thinking about this. This is kind of like one of those shower thoughts type things. So we're going to throw the auto sum, right? So for a total of $460 for this small office, I have all my gear. By the way, when I sell gear, I never sell it to you directly. It's drop shipped. You pay for it. I don't mark up equipment. I don't believe in it. Ubiquiti equipment is affordable enough, and even if I sold you CISCO, I would be hooking you up with a reseller. I don't want to mess with the sales tax. I don't sell any physical product itself. I only sell myself as a service, right? So you would pay $460. You're going to pay cost for this. I can't even buy a Cisco ASA firewall. I might be able to buy the firewall for $460 with no licensing. And I know you're saying, well, it's got an 8-port switch in the back. Okay, but where's your access point? Then you start getting into these Cisco all-in-one devices. I can't even guess anymore, but I don't believe you're going to be able to touch what you get here in functionality for $460 in Cisco land. I'm guessing you're going to be at least $1,000 in the Cisco. Oh, look at that. I'm not an Excel master. Never claimed to be. So my wife is actually the Excel guru. So you're going to be over $1,000. And that's probably easy. And you're going to buy it from a reseller. There's a huge markup, or the local partner is going to want to sell it to you. I don't know. Cisco's got a huge distribution, and they do some really crazy things, and they've got this gray market, and it's like navigating Microsoft licensing. It's crazy. Okay, so let's talk about another reason let's talk about a reason why you might not use Ubiquiti, right? So if you want to, there's a saying in this industry, switch when you can, route when you must, because switches are much more efficient at moving data around networks. So layer 3 switches are much more efficient than like a standard router. And it's because they can do that switching at wire speed. So if you are going to use some advanced features like layer 3 switching with dynamic protocols, so if you're going to do layer 3 routing and you need dynamic protocols, OSPF, then Cisco is going to work better than Ubiquiti, because Ubiquiti doesn't do any layer 3 dynamic routing protocols. And features, if you look at features, Cisco will do Q&Q as where Ubiquiti won't. So if you're a service provider and you need Q&Q, which and by the way, this conversation, I'm sure that I'm going to take a lot of flack in the comments, because no matter what I say, who's better or whatever, everybody's going to have their own comment on this, and this is one of those conversations where you take 1,000 IT guys and you put them in a room, and you're going to get 1,000 different opinions. So just keep that in mind as well. But Q&Q is usually found on a service provider network, so you can take your customers' VLAN tags and pass those through your port that's tagged, and it gets into some service provider stuff. I actually have some Extreme Networks videos coming out later in Q2 that are going to go over Q&Q. We're going to get into some really advanced networking stuff with Extreme Networks, but we're going to tie Ubiquiti and Cisco back into that. So obviously, too, when you come into like a server environment where there are like ESXi hosts, where these servers are doing a lot of heavy lifting, passing a lot of network traffic, in smaller deployments, we could probably get away with Ubiquiti, but when you want to do a lot of heavy lifting and you want to have that matrix cable that connects, that does the stacking of those switches and has a 70 gig switching backplane between the two switches, Ubiquiti just doesn't offer that. So you need to look at another vendor for that. So we can do 10 or 20 gig between Ubiquiti switches if we create a lag and we're using 10 gig, the SFP plus, but sometimes that's just not enough. There are networks that I'm sure are doing at least 40 gig, and right now Ubiquiti's not going to cut it. But on price for features, it doesn't get any better than Ubiquiti. If you look at the feature set that Ubiquiti does provide and the price, they kill every competitor in the market. Every competitor. And I will stand by that. They have a $1,500 10 gigabit router. It's got 8 SFP plus. I mean, no one else is touching that price. Now, somebody's going to say, well, what about MikroTik? MikroTik, however you pronounce it. MikroTik, they have some routers. I don't think they're in that price range. So, but we've got some MikroTik videos coming too. We're going to be doing IPsec to edge router video next week. I'll release that. But then finally, well, let's talk about standards. So you've got those company standards we talked about, and then you've got compliance standards and things like that. And there may be some environments where you can't run Ubiquiti because it's written into an IT policy that says you have to use Cisco, you have to use, a company, and this could also be compliance driven that offers 24/7 global support. Now, you could contract somebody like me to provide your Ubiquiti support, but at a higher level, but is it going to be cost effective? Because you may not always be able to get me. I'm one man, and even if you work with some of the other companies that I do subcontracting for, you're probably not going to get 24-hour coverage. So when you look at the larger companies, Extreme, Cisco, Juniper, and you can get those kind of contracts, if you have to have those, you're going to want to go there unless you're extremely proficient in networking and you're not going to need to call. You're only going to need to swap out gear. Then that takes us back to price, and the thing is, with let's talk about like a Cisco 2960 or even a Cisco 3750 versus an edge switch or a Unify switch. I can buy 5 switches for the Ubiquiti switches for the price of one, so I could have 4 sitting on the shelf, and one could go bad every year for a year, and at the end of that 5 years, I wouldn't feel bad about budgeting for 5 more switches. Now, I will tell you, I have Ubiquiti switches that have been in play since they started releasing edge switches and Unify switches, and I have some that have never gone bad. I have some that were in play a week and went bad. I had one out of the box, but they are shipping large amounts of switches, so that's going to happen. And I can tell you, there has been bad Cisco gear. There has been bad Juniper gear. I did a deal with Juniper when they were first breaking into the SMB market, and they came in and they undercut Cisco. We were replacing all the switches in a core network, and they came in and they undercut Cisco by $40,000. You can't ignore that. We put it in. We had a lot of the EX3200 switches, and every single one of them had early hour failure. So we ripped all the Juniper out and replaced it with Cisco. And there's only a few bits of Cisco left, and it's where you have to have that stacking and you have to have high bandwidth between switches. But I'm also working on a plan to replace that with either Extreme, Brocade, or some sort of combination of Ubiquiti working with the SFP plus ports, because I think it's possible. But I just have to experiment. So the last thing that I really want to talk about is the support. And there's a lot that goes into support, so it's not just picking up the phone and being able to get somebody, because you've got my phone number. You can call me. I may not answer, and you can email me, but I'm probably going to answer you if you email me. If you call me, at some point I will get back to you. I may not always answer the phone. So I have a day job, and I don't do consulting from 8 a.m. Central till 4:30 p.m. Central. You might get me on my lunch break. Sometimes I take calls on my lunch break, but during business hours where my job pays me, I do not do consulting. So you're not going to get me during that time, but you might get me other times. So besides the human factor of the support, let's talk about like firmware, right? This is where Ubiquiti is handing all these vendors Ubiquiti's eating their lunch, and these other vendors, they need to figure this out, because Ubiquiti doesn't charge us a cent for support. And when we talk about support, so you can get support through them, or you could pay someone like me to do your support, which I appreciate, and talk to all my customers. You'll find out why I have like an A+ rating for support. But look at the firmware. Ubiquiti sells you a $100 switch, an $80 cloud key. They sell you a $110 router. And what do? For the entire lifetime of that product, you never once pay for a software update or a firmware update. Never. You get the software for as long as that piece of hardware is going to last, until they end of life it, which at this point right now I've only got one thing in my controller that's showing up end of life, and that's those square access points. No other company is as proactive about it as Ubiquiti, and I challenge you to come up with a company that is handling it exactly like Ubiquiti, and I think you're going to come up with a very short list. There may be some out there that I'm not aware of, but they may not be fit for, you can say, well, Linksys and D-Link, they provide the firmware. Yeah, they do. They're not providing it like Ubiquiti's providing it. They don't provide a management platform for free that you can log into and upgrade. They don't provide that. They're not providing it on the same level as Ubiquiti. So we need to talk apples to apples. Here's another thing. About 2015 timeline, 2015, 2016, somewhere in there, Cisco released a vulnerability 10 on their ASAs, right? Now, because of the skill set that I have, we never really carried SmartNet, because when we had so many devices, it was easier to buy a new one. And at this point, Cisco had never had a vulnerability in the time we were running the ASAs where we had to address it like this. So I got a quote. We had two 55, they were, whatever the 55, they might have been 5515s at the head end. And then we had 5505s at all the remote sites. Just to get the SmartNet to do this legally. Now, I know a lot of you will just do whatever with firmware, but companies need to be compensated in the way they want to be compensated, and you need to do it legally. So to legally do this, just to get on the version of firmware for our head end, so two 5515s, I think that's what they were, that are 5525s. I don't know the Cisco model numbers. I'm not really concerned with those anymore, but just to get the SmartNet, to get those two up to date to the version of code that did not have this vulnerability, cost more than for me to rip out all of 24 5505s and those two at the head end and replace them all. I did it for less than the cost of the software licensing of those two devices. So you bet that I did it, and I'll never look back. I'll never look back, because I can augment along with Ubiquiti networks. If I need to stick in IDS, IPS, I can hang a box off of an edge router or put it in a USG. I can do all of that. I can do port mirroring. I can use compensating controls for things that are not included in that box. So when somebody says, well, the Ubiquiti doesn't do this, you can make it do that. You got to want to make it do that. And if you're in the beta program, you know that Ubiquiti has IDS, IPS coming out on the USG, and it's going to be pretty fantastic when that comes out. So I think I covered everything that I kind of wanted to cover. So there's a lot of things. So I can't decide for you, because there are going to be some instances where I'm not going to deploy Ubiquiti, as much as that. Some of you are like, oh, he said he's not. There are some places where Ubiquiti's just not going to fit when I got to do some heavier lifting, some more advanced things in a network. Ubiquiti's just not going to fit. But when I come down to probably 75% of the networks that are out there, Ubiquiti is going to be a great fit for those. And I want to see Ubiquiti in all of those. And I give other vendors a fair shake. We're going to go back to the Zycel stuff. We're going to try it out. And this is what I'm going to do for that. I'm going to create a generic email, and you're all going to be able to contact me. And I'm going to let you log into that account and check the Zycel stuff out for yourself. So that, because I probably do have a slant towards Ubiquiti, so we're going to set it up. We're going to do a video on it. You're going to log in. You're going to decide for yourself. That's how we're going to do it. But there's a lot of things. If you got any questions, if you need design, best practice design, let me know. Contact me. This is a service I provide. But and feel free to email me, and I will answer simple questions about this. You can also use the Discord link down there and come onto the Discord channel and ask questions. Just communicate. So I know I may take a lot of flack for this video because I'm not strongly recommending one vendor over another across the board, and that's okay. You've got your opinions, and I'm sure people in the comments are going to say D-Link is awesome and Netgear is awesome and all these other vendors are awesome that I didn't mention. And that's fine. We've all got our own opinions, and we all know the business constraints that we're working in, and we're going to pick the best product, that meets those needs. Once again, if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe. Please comment and share. Please follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Please sign up for the newsletter by going to h5llc.com. While you're there, contact me if you need any consulting. We'll get you taken care of. Go out, get on that Discord. Charlie does such a good job running that Discord channel for us. I'm thankful that he reached out. If you need to buy any Ubiquiti Networks gear, please use my Amazon affiliate link down there. That's always appreciated. Doesn't change your price, just kicks a few bucks to the channel. And as always, thank you again. We've got some some NetTool giveaways coming up once we hit 20,000, and if you're a subscriber on the mailing list, that's the first one that we're going to give away. And as always, I will see you in the next video.